Okay, so now we're going to talk about uh, Marr's level with an example on color vision, right? So in this example, the problem is what is trying to extract the color of a given object. Of course, on a computational level, you're going to need to describe the problem a bit more precisely. Um, So we're going to do that. So in this example, we want to figure out the color or the reflectance of the object that we're looking at. So this right here is an object, the sort of gray circle. It's an object that has some color, and we want to figure out what the color of that object is. Um, so we see the color that is coming from the object. So light two, we see this light two here. Uh, However, that light too that we see is both a function of the object's color as well as the color of light one, right? And so the light of the color is a function of the uh, object's actual color as well as the illuminant that is hitting the object. And unfortunately, we only know the color that is coming from the object, light two. We don't know, in this example, we don't know the color of light one, right? Of the illuminant. And so for this reason, we call this an underdetermined problem, uh, right? And this is because we don't have enough information that would allow us to determine the color of the object. If you think of light two is a combination of the object's color multiplied by the illuminant, which is light one. And so just like solving the problem of x times y equals 48, solving for x, we can't solve for x, right? It could be x is 3 and y is 16, or it could be that x is 2 and y is 24, right? These are all possible values of x and y. So just like you can combine certain lights, different pairs of lights to yield another light, right? And as we'll see later in this course, most problems that the cognitive system has to solve are underdetermined, right? There's not enough information to determine whatever the problem is that we're trying to solve. And so, in order to uh, in order to figure out what the object's color is or or infer what it might be, we must either have additional information or we must make assumptions about light one. So on a computational level, right, we can think of, okay, what information is getting extracted and why, right? Well, the answer to that in this example is, well, we're trying to figure out the object's color. And why are we doing that? I don't know. Maybe it's useful. Maybe red roses are going to be poisonous, but yellow roses aren't. I don't know. Or berries. I guess I should say berries. We don't eat roses, but we eat berries, maybe. What cues are available? Well, we only have light two. That's the only thing we know. What extra knowledge or assumptions could make this problem tractable or solvable? Well, light one. If we knew light one, we could solve for the object color and figure out what it is. And as a result, because we only have one piece of the puzzle and we need two pieces, right? We would say that the inference that we're making is underdetermined because we need more information. Yeah. On an algorithmic level, right? Well, how does the system do what it does? How does it extract that information? What assumptions, computations, and or representations are required to do this? And you could also ask, can we write code, programming code to do this? Right, that would also fall under the algorithmic level, trying to figure out what steps are needed in telling a computer, for example, how to do this. All right, so to talk about this more, I want to introduce this example. So this is sort of like a Rubik's Cube, right? And you can see here that this top square looks very brown-like, whereas this one on the side looks more orange-like, right? Uh, Surprising, or maybe it may not be obvious, but these are actually the same exact color, right? I didn't trick you. They are the same. I don't have, unfortunately, I wasn't able to do it the way that maybe I would want to do it to make it more obvious, but they are the same exact color. And why? Why are they being perceived differently? Well, above, or sorry, the square above, right? We see that there's light hitting the top squares the most, whereas we see this shadow for the side squares, meaning that there's less light hitting the side squares. And as a result, our brain essentially compensates for the fact that there's less light on the side than on the top, which results in a perception that the side square is actually brighter than it probably is. Importantly, in this example, we know, that there's less light on the side than there is on the top. But sometimes we don't know anything about the light source, right? And we have to make additional assumptions, right? And so now we're going to talk about a situation where we don't know anything about the light source, and now we have to make assumptions about it. So here's the famous dress that went viral a while back. Some people would argue that the dress was white and gold, like it looks like here, while others said that the dress was black and blue, right? And of course, it's the same dress, right? Um, it's the same dress, but because we don't know anything about the light that is hitting it, the color of that light, we must make assumptions. And so if you assume that the light source is more bluish, perhaps because the sky is blue, right? And so it's more natural light, um, people will likely interpret the dress as white and gold, right? So that's here. So this is the light is blue. And when it hits the dress, you assume or you perceive the dress as gold and white. Um, Whereas if one assumes that the light is more artificial, right, so more yellowish, then they might perceive, right over here, they might perceive the dress as more being blue and black. So if you think that the dress is being lit by something that is more bluish, then you will likely discount that blue that you're seeing, and you'll attribute it to the light source and not due to the dress actually being blue, right? Which is why you perceive it as gold and white. In contrast, if you think that the dress is being lit by light that is more yellowish, then you likely attribute the yellow that you're perceiving as being due to the light and not the actual dress, in which case you would probably perceive it as being black and blue, right? Notice though, the same dress. And when you equate the perceived lighting source, you see that they're identical. They have the same, they look exactly the same, right? So in this example, your perception of the dress's color will depend on what you assume the color of the light source is. And psychophysics can reveal the assumptions that the perceptual system uses to further constrain this underdetermined problem. So, all right, yeah. So in color vision, the algorithm might be to assume certain things about the light source in order to infer the color of the object. And then, of course, the implementational level is more about how is the algorithm physically realized, for example, in the brain. So, sorry, how is the algorithm physically realized in the brain or on a computer, maybe, right? Okay, and then in the next, we'll just keep doing these examples, and the next one we'll be talking about the heart, um, and we'll keep going on there.